Hi guys, welcome to Tanked Up. We are a beer drinking, game playing podcast. My name is Ben Nova. I'm joined by Alex Marpas.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, good man. Very good.
Cool.
Had a very not busy week in terms of playing games because my thumb is still a little bit fucked.
It's not bandaged anymore.
No, took the bandage off. It's just got a giant scar in it now.
Yeah, shit.
Still can't play very many games, so...
Fucking minging.
Thanks. Thanks. So, as the last few episodes, we're going to be chatting about games we've been playing over the last week. Whether that's many or not is to be seen. And then we're going to chat a little bit about whether game length is an issue with games like The Order and things coming out and being a little bit slated recently. We thought we'd just have a little bit of a discussion about it.
Cool.
So,
I've got some beers.
We have.
Obviously. So, this week we're drinking Brew By Numbers Saison. So it's the 0107 batch, I guess. Tiny Rebel Fubar Pale Ale and I'm ashamed to say a Tesco's bought revisionist California Steam-esque. I don't think it's actually from California. I think it's in the style from California. Brewed by someone?
Not brewed by Tesco, I assume.
Brewed by Marston's, which sounds...
Okay. Marston's is quite a big brewer.
Brewery. Yeah, it's not great.
Which one are we going to start with?
I don't know. What do you want to start with?
It's a difficult decision because I'm quite looking forward to the Brew By Numbers one.
Yes, and as it's a Saison, it's probably quite delicate. It might have to be drunk first.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So normally we're drinking Honest Brew. So the Saison and the Tiny Rebel are Honest Brew beers. So we're still drinking our way through the second crate that they've sent to us. So that's where we're getting these nice beers from. So you can get them as well.
Thanks, Honest Brew.
By going there. Yeah. They have been nice.
Well, I say thanks. We did buy them.
We did buy them.
We're giving
nice
them
about it. They're nice people. Good people.
Good. And they're a beer delivery service, aren't they?
It's a beer delivery service, yeah, that's true. So it's good if you're lazy, or if you don't know that much about beer and you just want someone to send you some beer, then you can get a nice selection. You just go and buy them all.
Otherwise, you've got to visit a giant supermarket, or I suppose a little independent stockist to get your beer.
Yeah.
Like us, just whip down to the local Tesco's to pick up an extra beer because we've drunk all of the other ones that we want to drink.
It's true. There's lots of good places to buy beer from these days, though, all over the country. So.
Yeah, very true.
Wherever you are, more or less.
Thank you very much.
Cool. So this is a Saison, another Saison.
Quite light.
Yeah.
Quite cloudy.
That's true. Which I quite like cloudy beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. It's got a kind. I don't know, sort of sharp, lemony smell to it.
It does. It's strange because when you look at a beer and you look at the colouring, it's very odd that almost comes through in the taste as well.
Yeah.
That it's quite a light colour, but it's also quite a light taste. It's not heavy at all. It doesn't sort of sit too heavy. It's sort of... What am I trying to say? It's nice.
It's nice. It's got like it's kind of, I don't know. It's got a decent level of bitterness to it.
Yeah.
Like the finish on the beer is quite like, I don't know how to describe it. Like sort of sour almost.
It is a little sour, yeah.
The Saison style is difficult to pin down. I think. I mean, I'm not great at. I have all of the beer lingo. But some people do. But
it's quite lively though as well. It's quite fizzy.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I sort of expected it to be a little bit flatter, I suppose. But then the other saisons we've had have also been have been quite lively. It's like the partisan was slightly lively as well. So
I really like that partisan. So I'm not sure which one I prefer out of the two of them. I only had a couple of sips. It's nice though.
It is nice. It is. Right. So I'm going to start this week.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Go for it.
Because I've been playing one game a lot. Well, I've been playing a couple of games, but one game mostly because I've not been able to play console games because of my thumb. It still hurts. I tried to play Ollie Ollie 2, which is a little skateboarding game by Roll7, which was free with PlayStation Plus this month. I played the tutorial and my thumb decided that it had enough and it no longer wanted to play PlayStation. So I downloaded a game called Darkest Dungeon, which is on Steam Early Access.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of a 2D dungeon crawler. So you move between various rooms along different corridors, 2D through these corridors. Various encounters can occur in the rooms or whilst you're moving through the corridors. You almost start off the game having to recruit a party. So you get to start picking different characters that you want to take into these dungeons.
I guess it's like a wizard, an elf, an archer.
No, they're all like human.
Okay.
They're all quite... So there is an element of magic, although it's...
So there is a wizard, then?
Well, there's always a wizard. There isn't anyone in a pointy hat. So the characters you have is almost, I can't remember, I think they're called a crusader and a duelist maybe. So the first couple of characters you start off with is almost like a paladin-esque type guy, two-handed sword. He might have a spell ability which affects a couple of the enemies that you're fighting. The other guy is a ranged sort of pistol user who has a knife, who's also able to...
So it has pistols.
It does. So it does have some ranged abilities. I've not found anyone with like crossbows or anything like that yet. One of the more exotic characters that you can get, I think, is called a jester, and he prances around with his loot, and he can do various moves that affect the whole party or affect all of your enemies based on how well he plays his loot. Not quite like that. But basically what happens is you have a party of 4 people, and because it's 2D, the order in which those 4 people stand is very important.
Yeah.
Because dependent on where they're stood, they can only do specific moves. So if you have a guy at the front, you normally want some kind of tank character, some kind of damage dealer who can hit the first 2 enemies in their row of 3 or 4, however many enemies you're facing. And at the back you want the more ranged characters or healers. I mean, it's in early access at the moment, so I imagine a lot will change when it's fully released. From patch notes, it says that it's about 50% completed, I think. And most of what they're going to add is more levels. There's a couple of items in the game that heal things like diseases and stuff, but I've not encountered being diseased at all yet. So whether that's not implemented yet, but they've got the items there ready to go. There's a little bit of customization you can take when you're not in a dungeon. You go back to like your hub area, which is a homestead, and you've got various different buildings. So you can upgrade them. You can make their weapons or armor better. You can make the abilities that they have more powerful. So in some sort of leveling up system, and you use gold to be able to do all of this, which you accrue through going through the dungeons. And the main element that I think makes this different from sort of other dungeon crawlers is that you have stress levels. So every time you go into a dungeon, not every time a character is hit, but when they're hit with specific attacks from the enemies, their stress goes up. And if
that's
the stress,
an interesting feature.
It is. It's very interesting. If your stress goes right to the top, so I think the stress is from 0 to 100. If you get to 100, then the character will freak out and they will do something. Now that can be beneficial or negative. I'm not sure whether it depends on the character, whether they've got a certain amount of traits in one way, because you've also got traits and they can be positive and negative as well, and they add to stats or detract from stats, things like that. So I've had ones where a character has just got a massive buff. He's pulled the rest of the party up and reduced all of their stress levels right down. Whereas I've had other ones where other characters will become selfish and they will move themselves to the back of your party to protect themselves because they're obviously scared and stressed out and they want to get away from the encounter. So that then completely messes up your game plan as such, your tactical game plan. And there is a massive element of strategy in this as well, because you plan where your characters are going to be, you can plan what attacks they want to do, you can plan whether you're going to use your healer to heal, whether you've got enough to take out, whether you can risk not healing so they can do another, a move that might stun an opponent to then give you another round to be able to then heal and things. And it's progressively getting harder. But I've almost got 2 parties on the go, because you hit level 3 with a character and they can no longer go in the lower level dungeons. So it scales with you as well. So I've now got sort of a 10 character roster. And it's also got elements of permadeath as well. So if a character dies in your dungeon, that's it, they're gone. But you can recruit new characters sort of throughout. I mean, it's very good for a sort of a cheap game. I think it was about £15, something like that, on Steam.
As a pre-release?
So it's early access. So it's almost early access. It's just sort of beta stage. You can go online onto their website, or I'm not sure whether you can do it through Steam, but you can leave feedback and comments whether you find any bugs or anything like that. You can go on and...
So £15 is not that cheap for early access, is it?
It's not that cheap. I mean, some of the games come out in early access which are more expensive. Something like DayZ, which came out early access, the standalone edition was £20 when it came out. But I'd seen a lot of videos and a few people talking about this game to know that I wanted to pick it up.
Yeah, I saw the video for it on Steam. Although it didn't make me want to play it that much, because it's not necessarily my type of game. I mean, it's attracted to the strategy side of it, I suppose. But you've got to say it does look beautiful. That's one of the main things about it. Aesthetically, it's lovely.
It's really very well drawn. It's all sort of a hand-drawn style.
Yeah, so it's wonderful.
The characters have some really nice animations, sort of when they're either attacking or when they've been hit and things like that. So.
Yeah, it's like sort of comic-esque.
Yeah.
You know, like the movements were... I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like the way that the animation wasn't...
It's not a fluid animation. It's almost a 3-stage animation. So you see the character stood there, then move into the move into another position to show what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So you can imagine it as like a series of like strips or something.
Yeah.
So it looked great.
I mean, that definitely adds to it as well, because when you're moving through the dungeons, you come up to a chest or a wardrobe or a pile of bodies or something to try and loot. And the character almost goes up and slightly half turns his back and puts his hands up in the air as if he's to say sort of like, yes, this is mine. So that's quite sort of cool, and some of the little animations are really nice. So. Yes, I've been playing that quite a lot just because my hands are rubbish.
Well, you've got to play PC games when you can't play console games, I suppose, haven't you?
It's true.
Well, actually, no, that's not. But I don't mean that. I mean, if you can't play a console game, then the only thing you can do is play a PC game. Often, PC games are much better than console games, realistically. Depends what you want.
It does depend what you want. I think it depends whether you prefer playing with a mouse and keyboard or controller, although you can hook up whatever controller you want really these days to a PC to be able to use it as well. But I mean, I haven't got a controller for my PC and I just use mouse and keyboard, because normally if I want to use a controller, I'll get it for a console instead, I suppose. And something, a few games that come out multi-platform. I know GTA 5 isn't released on PC yet, but is very close. I'm not sure I'd want to play that on a PC with a mouse and keyboard, at least, versus using a controller, just because it's so ingrained. The last iterations of the GTA games so ingrained in my brain, and I know exactly how to use that. And because I then have the console, I can just go and pay 40 quid for a game, bring it back, put it straight in. Whereas I would have to go out and buy another controller or buy the adapter that would allow me to use a controller on my PC.
Is there any advantage
additionally.
of playing it on the PC? Is the load time quicker, or does the environment feel smoother? Is that, I mean,
I would imagine
not,
it depends on the PC that you've got. If you've got a really high-end PC, then things are going to run a lot better. You're going to get better lighting effects, better shading, better textures compared to something like an Xbox One or a PS4. But
then you're not going to have everything dedicated to playing it, whereas you will on a console. It's
true.
It's going to be running nothing but that game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure sort of how much memory sort of an operating system takes up on a console in comparison to the memory requirements for operating. If you're running Vista, then you probably can't play any games.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas if you're running one of the newer versions, like 7 or 8 or 10 or something, then it might be a lot easier to play games because they might not be so memory intensive. I'm not really sure. I don't think I've ever played, apart from the first GTA, which I played on both PS1 and a PC, I don't think I've ever played another game on both to make the comparison. And it's not something that I would do because I don't have the cash to be able to buy the same game
it's quite
on
a
several
to
sort
get
of
on both platforms. Why would you? I had a training day at work today doing SQL training, and we did it on Windows 97. I was like, fucking hell, this is old school looking. It's so rubbish looking. Jesus. So I dropped that in there.
Nice.
Windows 97, shit. Although actually...
Possibly the only people using 97 now.
Yeah, that's right. But it was quite reliable. Everyone hated on Windows. Was it Windows 2000 was the next Windows?
Windows... ME? Was that the networking
Windows
one?
ME.
Yep, there was
that one that got
Windows
tired
Millennium.
All the time, had to lie down.
I don't know. I think it was ME, or was it XP?
I've never heard of Windows ME before.
There was definitely Windows Millennium, I think. It was meant to be like Windows 2000.
Well, yeah, there was
whether it was a
Windows
networking 2000 version of it, so it's better for large networks. I don't really remember, but I'm sure there was a version called ME, which possibly stood for Millennium. I could be talking shit.
Yeah, quite possibly. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, enough about Windows. Let's finish this beer off. And
we will. So yeah, if you like dungeon crawlers, play Darkest Dungeon. It's very good. It's very nice. However, maybe wait until it's out of early access because the game will be the full release. I don't think they're going to increase the price when the game releases sort of 100% complete. I imagine that anyone that buys it, if you do buy it now, you will then just get the full game when it patches through.
Yeah.
And I know that currently they're going to be adding a lot more levels and things. There's only about 3 of what looks like to be 6 levels open at the moment.
So what's to stop you buying the early access and then just not playing it and waiting for the full game to come out and just getting it? I mean, even if they're not going to...
Nothing.
I mean...
You might find that when it releases there'll be a price drop. I think with a lot of early access games, developers need an injection of cash. So they might not have a dedicated publisher. They might need a bit more money to be able to continue working on the game.
Yeah, I assume that's why, and it's you're paying them to then report on bugs that you find and stuff, which obviously helps. But I mean, you'd imagine it's got to be cheaper when it's not the finished product. I mean, that's
before it's the finished product, possibly, but you might then find that they've made enough from early access to see. You know, they might have expected to sell. I haven't got a clue, but something like 5,000 copies, and they end up selling 10,000. They've made twice the amount of money that they need, so they can either then plunge all of that money into development to make it better, or they can plunge the same amount of money they were going to into development, take the additional money to then say, well, actually, we can probably reduce this to $12.99 and give the early access people, not for Darkest Dungeon, but for, I don't know, they could give you a soundtrack or give you additional, skins for characters or an additional character or something like that. So there's definitely ways of playing with the idea of early access. Something like DayZ, which is almost seems like it will be in constant early access, never going to have a release.
I think StarMade's a bit like that as well. It's just constantly being like patched and fixed and different things coming out for it. Like half the wikis are out of date now, which is kind of annoying. But anyway, shall we? What do you want next?
Right. Should we try the Fubar? Should we leave the steam beer till last?
Yeah, if you like, yeah. Cool. So this Tiny Rebel, who are one of the... Oh, so Brew By Numbers, I didn't really say. They're on the Bermondsey Beer Mile as well. Although I didn't get a chance to pop in there. We were having a busy day that day.
Yeah.
Stuff was kicking off. But they were funded by Brewdog, out of the Brewdog Development Fund, where they plough 50 grand into startup breweries each year.
Yeah.
So Brew By Numbers are about 2 years old, I think. And
okay.
Just a couple of guys got some backing from Brewdog, obviously skilled brewers themselves. So they're a hot up-and-coming brewery in their own right. Which brings me on to Tiny Rebel, who are another London-based, like, happening kind of new brewery that everybody seems to be talking about at the moment as well. So both of these are very trendy, right on the pulse of the UK craft scene. Right now.
Going back to what we were talking about last week with like the graphics on these bottles, the Brew By Numbers one is very nice.
It's classy.
It is very classy. But I fucking hate the Fubar.
Really?
I'm not sure whether it's just the font, whether it's the image. There's just something about it.
We'll be putting up pictures of the beers so people can see for themselves. But
as we have been, if you follow us on Twitter, which you should do.
Yeah, but just for those who don't, Brew By Numbers, all of their beers show numbers on the front of them, for one thing. But I'm guessing it's style and batch or something like that. So this one says 01-07. So style and recipe, I was close. Style and recipe, so...
Style 1, recipe 7.
So they're calling Saison style 1, I guess. And they've iterated the recipe for it 7 times before they got to here.
Well, I think it says on the back, recipe Nelson.
Well, Nelson, that's the Nelson Sauvin.
So maybe they use it. Maybe they make a Saison with a different hop then.
Possibly. I think they'll be tinkering around with it. I mean, the whole point of craft beer is that it's not about making the same beer all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Which is like the beautiful thing about it and the frustrating thing about it as well, because you can be. It's like filled with novelty and stuff. Wonderful things that you can find that's totally different, that you won't ever taste in a different place. But it's also annoying because when you find one that you really, really like I once had this wild beer IPA in Small Bar in Bristol, and it was just blew my mind. It was just amazing. It was like the best, or certainly one of the top 3 beers I've ever had. And I've had a lot of their beer since then, and I haven't had one that's quite as good. And they must have made just a wonderful batch.
Yeah, just that one batch.
Whatever they were doing,
really liked.
They did it really well that day.
Yeah,
and, so it's good. It's frustrating. It shows the fleeting nature of life. Nothing's permanent. Everything just is an experience to be had, and then it disappears into the ether. Anyway, on that note, the Fubar, the Tiny Rebel Fubar logo is like a grenade. So my girlfriend was saying to me earlier that she was like, oh, I know Fubar, I've heard of that. And I was like, okay, maybe you have. I know, maybe you haven't. She was like, you sure you're not thinking of Saving Private Ryan where they say Fubar? And she was like, yeah, I think that's where it is. It's got a grenade, presumably because that actually is the reference. It fucked up beyond all recognition is what Fubar. Is that actually a thing, or is it just from the film? I don't know.
I don't know.
No.
I first heard it in that film. Whether it is actually a term used by
the army.
Yeah, I don't know.
None of my business.
But I mean, I suppose it's a bit unfair for me to say. Well, it's not unfair for me to say. It's my opinion. I hate the label, but I think it's the
shittest label.
I think it's just the text.
Yeah, the text
just the ununiform, rebellish type of text.
The text looks
Tiny
a bit
Rebel,
like
rebellish.
From the TV program MASH from the 70s.
On the so the title Fubar does.
Yeah.
However, the rest of the text is just a little bit random, a little bit out there. It's not a font style of choice, unless it's a font style in InDesign or Photoshop. I don't want to know. Which this may be, and I've just not downloaded it. That's fine.
Well, we're hating on the label, but yeah,
it smells good. It's very clear. It's a very amber colour.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell that we're drinking.
So it's got like it's not like an American pale ale. So it's much more like British style.
Yeah.
It's got like a more of a bitterness to the end or something, but it's not full on punching hops.
No, it's again
dry.
as with the Saison, it is quite light.
Mm-hmm. It's spicy. That's what it is. And I'm guessing that's probably for the British ale yeast that's coming through from.
Yeah.
It doesn't say what hops it's got in it, does it?
I don't think so. It doesn't look like it says on the back what hops it has.
No. So yeah, it's like a nice, I would say, British pale ale style.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong
I mean,
with
it
that
tastes
at all.
good.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. Definitely. I can see what you're saying with spicy.
Mm-hmm.
It does have a certain, not peppery sort of taste, but it's sort of that sort of light kick to it almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Right, so we should drink this, or I should drink it, while you talk about what you've been playing this week.
Okay, so my Xbox wireless receiver thing that you plug into the back to get Wi-Fi from it, that decided... I was just playing something on it the other day, like switched it off, went and made some toast or something, and came back, decided actually I'll play a bit more, switched it on again, and it just was like, no, there's no Wi-Fi anymore. But there is Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi is fine in my house. It's just the receiver on the back just decided that something like... I can't even imagine what it is that could just stop. Like, I didn't kick it, nothing happened to it, it just stopped working. So is there some wire in there that broke or something? Is that how it works? I don't know. So, I just can't be asked to pay like 30 quid to get a new one.
Yeah.
It seems like it's not fair. It shouldn't happen. So I'm a bit like you with your thumb. I haven't been able to play your console. I had only Wi-Fi, so I can't. I'm not going to play. I just can't play online games where the main thing about them is play one player offline on a game like FIFA or Call of Duty or something. I tried playing a bit of. You played much of Advanced Warfare?
Not much at all. A small amount.
The more I play it, the less I like it.
Okay.
Which is weird. I mean, the main difference is like the jumping thing.
Yeah. Being able to shift left and right and having some kind of jump pack, right? And double jumping and...
You don't shift left and right that much. That's more in the new Halo, which is quite similar. It's a jumping thing that's more directional. You can go forwards. Like you can sort of shoot. You could double jump, essentially boosts you into the air, and then you get like a directional impulse thing. So you can shoot forwards a little bit as well. Jumping up means that the way you interact with the levels is different. So instead of it being essentially a 2D plane where maybe you can go upstairs or something that changes,
you get a slight vantage point in it.
Yeah, but it's essentially a 2D plane. Like jumping doesn't really mean very much. Now it's like I suppose it's still a 2D plane. It's just that the surfaces that you can reach are like way higher than in a normal COD setting.
So it makes it slightly more vertical than it.
Yeah, it definitely increases the verticality of it, if that's even a word. Which is fine, because, I mean, I guess that from the development point of view, they were thinking, we keep churning out CODs every year, and all we're doing is, like, adding little game modes and tweaking...
Change the settings slightly.
Yeah, change the way that you get your kill streaks and your whatever, your upgrades and stuff.
The progression through.
So they figured they would push it like an extra stage. And I mean, before it came out, I was watching videos where is it Infinity Ward or Activision? I can't remember which one it is that made this one, but anyway, where it was like their developers sitting around playing it and then talking about how cool the game is and stuff, and they were playing it, in the studio with like just an enormous TV and like all of them getting well into it and stuff, and it did look fun. But it's kind of different when you take it home and you just sat there with maybe you and your one mate or something, just quietly playing it on your much smaller TV. You're just like thinking...
You're not like party room. You're not in Activision's party room.
Yeah, right. If I was in the Activision party room, I'd probably be partying. But it was just a bit of a disappointment. Somehow jumping around... I don't want to be jumping up. Stupid. I'm not Spider-Man. I want to play Spider-Man. I'll play Spider-Man. I want to play Call of Duty. I want to play... I know, not realistic, but it gestures towards realism. Like the best.
You want to play a first-person shooter that's more entrenched in a realistic experience than in a futuristic fantasy setting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I want to play really futuristic fantasy setting, I'll play Halo. That's why I don't play Halo. I don't want to play. I want to just because what annoys me is the guns. If guns are made up, then they can do anything. Which is, I mean, I don't know. I'm quite picky with things, but like, if you've just made up a laser gun and you're shooting at an alien that you've just made up as well, it's not much like that's what happens then with that, I suppose. But if it's like a real gun, it was cool. But I heard that British troops actually trained, like they were supposed to be given G64s or something when they were out in Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever, before the guns arrived, because obviously in supply issues and like funding issues and whatever. For first experience with the gun, they were actually given copies of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, I think, which had it in as a gun.
Right.
And they were like, well, this is what it's like. This is what the kickback's like and the fire rate and the reload time and stuff. It's the best experience you're going to get for it. That's cool. It's like there's some like tangible connection to reality.
Simulate it to make it a training program as such.
Advanced Warfare is never going to be used like that. So I was playing a bit of one-player Advanced Warfare and not cool. That's not what I wanted to be doing at all. So I've not played that much. I did download a weird game called Synonymy, which I saw the advert for it on Steam, and the advert was narrated by Richard Dawkins.
Okay.
Who the Richard Dawkins Foundation co-funded it. Yeah, that was a good point to me. I like Richard Dawkins. He's kind of like angry, self-assured, pompous person that appeals to me for some reason. So he sold it to me. It's a word game where you get given a word as your starting word and you get given a word as your destination word, and all you get is synonyms of your starting word. You have to pick one, and then it'll take you to another screen where you've got synonyms of that word, and what you have to do is keep picking synonyms until you get to a synonym of your last word where you can pick the last word and you've got there. And it's all about trying to get from your starting word to your destination word in as quick a route as possible. And it's another sort of beautiful game because when you're travelling from word to word, it gives you like musical keys to cues, whatever, to tell you whether you're going in the right direction or not. So I think it's the higher pitch, the chord that it plays when you click on the word, the closer you're getting to your destination. Yeah. But it might be how dissonant the chord is, because some of them are a bit weird sounding chords.
Flat or sharp.
Or like diminished chords or something rather than a major chord. So not quite got to grips with that. And I haven't really figured out how the hell you're supposed to have a strategy on it, because I can't think two synonyms ahead. Like, how do you think, oh, well, if I click on this word, I know I'll just purview in my mind all the synonyms of that word and pick one of them and purview all of those synonyms. It's like I'm just sort of randomly picking words and just seeing what happens as it moves along. So
trying to get a higher
just anything I can do to get
than...
there. So that's fun. And obviously I've been playing StarMade a bit as well. I mean, I've been at work as well. I didn't just sit around playing games, unfortunately. So
isn't that your job? Just testing the StarMade servers constantly?
I wish. If anyone who makes StarMade is listening and wants someone who can just sit and play StarMade all day, then give us a tweet. Let me know, and I'll quit my job and move to California or wherever it is that you come from and do that. That'll be fine.
Nice. It does seem like from like what you were describing before, it does seem that StarMade is a bit more of an intricate physics-based Minecraft. And with Minecraft being as big as it is, whether StarMade is sort of almost banking on the already audience, sort of their pre-made audience that something like Minecraft has. However, you didn't play Minecraft before, did you?
No,
You've sort of fallen into StarMade, so maybe it's...
But I wanted a big, fully interactive space strategy game.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted that anyway. And then was perusing Steam to see what was out there. And I don't know, I saw the demo and it looked cool. So I downloaded it. Yeah. But then, I also saw No Man's Sky as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you were showing me the new...
Sid Meier's Starships?
So is it not a Civilization, it's just made by Sid Meier?
I believe so. It's a Firaxis developed 2K published game, I think.
Okay.
Made by Sid Meier, and it's almost Civilization but on a more galactic scale. You've got planets rather than cities. You fly around the galaxy. Yeah. I assume it's still what I've looked at says there's still scientific victories, diplomatic victories, population victories.
So it is Civilization.
So it is Civilization. I mean, when we were looking at earlier, the price tag's only about £11, isn't it? Like $10.99 or something like that.
And is this an early access as well?
No, I think this is full release.
Really?
Which I think was released. Why is it so cheap then? In the last couple of days or today, I think was the release. I don't know why it's so cheap. Possibly there wasn't as much development period for it. Maybe they made it very quickly. Maybe it was something that they wanted to... maybe it's not fully fledged as something like Beyond Earth was, where Civilization Beyond Earth when that came out, or Civ 5 when that came out.
How are you finding Beyond Earth anyway? Are you still playing it?
No. I haven't played Beyond Earth for ages.
No, because you were really excited when it first came out.
I was really excited when it first came out. Yeah, it seemed... unlike you, the history part of Civilization doesn't grip me as much. Mm-hmm. And I wanted a similar sort of game which was in a fantasy setting. So I've spoken about Endless Legend before, various other games which are in a fantasy setting, but to have a game which is in a different kind of setting, which is ultimately Civ 5, and it has the core mechanics that make up Civ 5, was quite exciting. So I started playing it, and it's just Civ 5 with a different skin on it. I'm thinking, well, I'm doing almost exactly the same thing. Some of the things are nicer. The tech tree, or the tech web, is now a little bit nicer than it was from Civ 5. There's different things that you can do. Blah. It's one of those games that I bought when it came out. One of those, exactly. One of those games that it was just right. Yep, release day, bam, bought, full price. I want this game, and I can't say I'm disappointed with it.
You sound disappointed with it.
Well, it is what I wanted. There's just other games that have come out since that I'd rather play, and had this not have come out, and I'd have still been playing Civ 5, I think exactly the same thing would have happened. I would have dropped Civ 5.
Yeah, I dropped Civ 5.
And played the other games that I've been playing. So I think it's quite an expensive reskin of Civ 5, really. So maybe...
disappointing.
It is, but maybe with something like Starships, they've realised that maybe they can't just churn out the same kind of game.
Well, yeah, but then they're going to do the same Advanced Warfare mistake. I mean, you can't just churn out the same game. But the thing is, when you've got a really good game, you're in that kind of weird conundrum where you can't keep putting out the same thing, but if you tinker with the recipe, you might just ruin it. And then what you're now putting out there, in my opinion, Advanced Warfare is just another first-person shooter. It may as well be in the COD range. It's just... So you need to change it to make it more interesting, but you don't want to change it too much because you're losing the thing that makes you the market leader in that particular field or whatever. So don't want I don't want the Civilization franchise to move too far away from essentially Civ 4, which is where it peaked, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And Civ 5 is good, but I mean, didn't sink as many hours into it as Civ 4.
Did you ever play Age of Empires?
No.
It's a very similar kind of game, slightly different in that you build individual buildings rather than having a city to then build buildings in. Various different, so rather than your units being created from one city, your units are created from a specific building instead, and you set out your buildings within your town.
Is it just a one-town management game, or...?
Can I remember it? It's a game I've not played for ages.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you almost had one area that you set your town out in. There were various outposts. I think in the third game there were smaller, almost like with Civ having city-states. Age of Empires 3 had Native American villages. So you could go and you'd do something for those Native Americans, and they would then give you their unit, and those units would be very good, sort of early game, but late game when suddenly you're playing with
gunpowder,
and muskets and things, they didn't do so well. But I only bring this up because I understand that they are possibly bringing out a new Age of Empires game. This isn't any kind of in the know knowledge. It's only sort of what I've read or heard in the last sort of few months on various gaming news sites and things. But that would be interesting to see, because it's almost a similar sort of game, but that takes its town building and layout sort of ideas in a different direction.
Yeah.
So Age of Empires 3 came out several years ago. We're probably talking 8 or 9 years now. Maybe not quite that much, but nowhere near the rate that they're churning out Civilization games.
Yeah. So kind of sounds like Civilization crossed with SimCities. Is that fair?
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
A lot more towards the Civilization skew. Not so much towards the SimCity, but it's you're setting out I suppose with SimCity you set out an area which is residential, you set out an area which is commercial and industrial. This is, you will specifically place your barracks which generate these units here. You will then put your stables here, you will then put your blacksmiths here and things. It doesn't really have any kind of consequence to where you place your buildings in relation to each other, and that would be quite nice. Whether you can only upgrade your your foot soldiers in better armour if a blacksmith is within a certain radius of something, but that's a completely game mechanic which which isn't in existence, I suppose, at the moment. I don't think there's many games that have something that deep to then look at things like layout and stuff. So yeah.
Fair.
So you've just been playing that and StarMade. Bit of Advanced Warfare, one player, a little bit of StarMade.
Yeah. What else did I play? I feel like I'm forgetting something. But if I am, then I am.
I know what you played that you showed me. A little game called Super Hexagon.
Oh yeah,
which
that's badass.
An insane Twitch-based game.
So that
really
is like the most playable game I've played. It's like the crack cocaine of computer games, I guess, in general. So my housemate Adil had downloaded it from Steam for or maybe from one of those sites that sells you Steam games, Steam game codes or whatever at discount prices, for £2. And it was called Super Hexagon, something like that.
Yeah.
Mega Hexagon, something like that. Definitely had Hexagon in the title.
Yeah, I think it was called Super Hexagon.
Super Hexagon, yeah. My days, that game was so addictive. So all it is how do you describe it? It's like a kind of kaleidoscope.
A block in the middle of the screen, yeah, and then you have a kaleidoscope of
shapes moving in towards you, and all you have to do is not get trapped in a space that gets cut off as it's all shrinking towards the center. So all you have to do is left, right, and spin the little
ship
point thing out of the way there's like always a way of getting out of the shapes as they get smaller and smaller and threaten to squash you. And the music is some like weird techno or something.
But it gets faster and faster and faster, doesn't it? Like,
and it's flashing, the lights on it.
I think the most I lasted was about 9 seconds.
Yeah, and I got to like, I don't know, 40 seconds or something, really pushing hard to get
dedication.
there. It was really, and when you get past like 10 seconds or something, it changes, the vibe switches, the colours change, the music changes tempo, everything gets a bit quicker.
It just gives you a different visual cue to almost put you off slightly, I suppose, to make it slightly harder.
I kind of felt like it was designed by a psychology PhD who was testing out some theory about like how to get people to become addicted to a game or something. All the cues were there. Maybe it's like I could imagine it was giving me like flashing images of, I don't know,
your subconscious just picking up
people or something, like, but so quick that I don't get to see it or something. Like, maybe I'm now gonna, at some point in the future, some signal will be transmitted to me, and I will then go in my assassination mode and
you just hit the trigger,
Barack Obama or something. I don't know, whatever they're programming me to do. So anyway, get that game.
I don't think that's what that game is trying to do.
They were programming me to then do a podcast and say that it was a great game. Okay, so let's have this. This is available in Tesco's, and I'm no fan of Tesco's as such, but
the third beer of the evening.
The third beer of the evening, and I got this because you'd been playing a skateboarding game, and then you thought that you wanted a Californian beer to go with the skateboarding game, and this is not a Californian beer. It's brewed by Marston's, but it's in the Californian style. So the steam beer is a beer style that goes back to the Anchor Brewery, who I think after Prohibition ended, they were the only brewery that, what is it? Something like they were the only brewery that continued to make beer even when Prohibition was on, or they closed the factory but reopened it as a brewery without it being anything in between, and it was the only brewery that was able to do that. So it's something like, I mean, they're the only brewery that's allowed to call it steam beer, I think, although this says steam beer. I was sure that they had copyright for it being steam beer. Maybe it's steam.
So what is steam beer?
Well, it's a type of ale.
Is it the way it's made?
Yeah, essentially.
The process rather than the ingredients.
Taste it now.
It's very very dark.
I don't know that much about it, but I mean, I know that there's this history of the brewery. Ooh. It's not my favourite beer style. I've had a couple of them before. Actually, I mean, I've had an Anchor one.
It's very light.
Well, the colour isn't that light.
No, the colour's not light at all, but it
looks like apple juice.
It kind of does. It's very flat. It's a little bit darker than apple juice. I mean, it's nowhere near sort of a stout sort of colour, but it's...
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's amber.
It's definitely on the dark scale.
That's only because we had a Saison earlier on. It's not that dark, really. I mean, it's lighter than a brown ale. Think about it compared. If we had a gem.
I suppose it's a dark amber, isn't it?
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know how to describe the taste.
It's a little fruity. Not massively, but it smelt a lot fruitier than it tasted.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tautology, obviously. Everything is what it is. It isn't what it isn't. But, see, I like big, hoppy, American-style pale ale and IPAs, and this is not that.
No, not at all. This is very light. It's almost, in comparison to the previous two, quite watery.
Yeah, but it is made for Tesco's, remember. This is not a quality craft ale that we're drinking right now. This is it's a 500ml as opposed to a 330, and it's cheaper, which isn't a good sign, for one thing.
I mean, I don't think, with it being made for Tesco's as such, is a bad thing. Tesco's have just shelled out some money because somebody that worked at Tesco's thought, ooh, this is a nice beer. Let's make sure that nobody else can sell it but us.
That's true. And Tesco's have done a lot, like Tesco's started Brewdog essentially because that story about. So that it's supposedly, what I read was that the Brewdog guys were just two guys making beers between them who were lucky if they sold a case of beer a week, and then Tesco's ran a brewing competition. These two, the Brewdog guys, entered it, won first, second, and fourth place in this competition. And then on the basis of that, Tesco's had a meeting with them and were like, "We love your beers. We want to trial them in like 1,000 stores or something that we've got across the country. So we need you to make, X many barrels per week for us. Can you do that?" And they have nowhere near that level of equipment or anything like that. But they just said, "Yes, definitely, of course we can do that." And signed a contract. And then went to their bank and said, "We've got this deal with Tesco's to make all this beer, but we haven't got any stuff to make it with, apart from expertise or whatever. So can we have a loan for like 100 grand or something to buy all this equipment and make it?" And the bank said no. So then they went to another bank and said, "Our bank has promised to do us a loan for this much money at this percentage rate. Can you beat it?" And the other bank went, "Well, yeah, we'll beat that. We'll undercut them." And gave them a slightly better interest rate than they were pretending that they had with their other bank, and they managed to get the deal, buy the equipment.
This is public knowledge now, right?
It's on a blog that Brewdog wrote themselves, so it's public knowledge.
Just got them into some shit with the banks. So just a manager shaking his fist in the background.
It's too late now. But yeah, so I mean, I'm not a big fan of Tesco's, but you wouldn't have Brewdog if it wasn't for Tesco's. You wouldn't have Brewdog if it wasn't for two guys running by the seat of their pants, bullshitting as well. But I mean, yeah, you can't hate too much on Tesco's if you like Brewdog.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's a Brewdog specially brewed for Tesco's double IPA, which is quite drinkable. It's not like a perfect drink or anything, but it's nice, and it's like 9%. So
I mean, this almost seems like something of nothing, really. It's I'm a little bit disappointed almost in comparison to having a look at the Fubar one and instantly thinking I wouldn't like it because of the label. It's very judgmental. However, it's a lot nicer than this one, or a lot more flavoursome.
Yeah,
this one. It's a lot
too bad.
It's not bad.
It
doesn't jump out.
If you were if you just drank traditional, let's say, normal lager, commercial lagers all the time, and you drank this, you probably wouldn't be saying, "Oh, this tastes of nothing," whatever, blah, blah, blah. You'd probably think this has a strong flavour. Because you'd probably think if you were that guy, you drank almost any craft ale, you'd be overpowered with the flavour. Too much flavour, don't like it. If you're that guy, you probably wouldn't hate on this too much. So if you're that guy listening now, you'll probably like this theme. If you don't know, it's not that you don't know anything about it, but if you never really tried any other beers, you just drink Foster's or whatever with your friends, and then you want to start somewhere, this is not going to scare you off.
No, not at all. It's a very entry level ale, really, isn't it? Yeah.
That's right. Good. Let's call it that.
Definitely. Right. So I thought we're going to chat very quickly.
We'll come to the actual topic of the podcast.
The thing that we should have been talking about for a while, which we'll only talk about very shortly now, because we've been going on for a little while about the games we've been playing and the beers that we're drinking, was game length. Now,
podcast length.
An hour and a half. No. So, just to set it up a bit, a game called The Order 1886 came out. PlayStation 4 exclusive by Ready at Dawn and Santa Monica Studios for Sony. Meant to be a very visually stunning game. A lot of people...
What type of game is it?
It's a third-person, over-the-shoulder cover shooter.
Okay.
A lot of people cried about it because of the length of it. Now, the game is out. You can go and play it. Some people really like it. Some people not so much. And I've not played it, but from what I understand, the mechanics let it down just as much as the game length does. So I thought we'd just talk very quickly about whether game length is important in any sense of that statement.
Okay, so game length is important, obviously, because you don't want to play a game and complete it the same day. I mean, that's a waste of money, it seems to me. Well,
So you say this is one of the almost
But
the
it's
crux of
obviously
the
a
argument,
downside,
isn't it?
I mean, it's not a good thing if you. I mean, especially if it's a game where, like, so some games, so for me, when getting a new Call of Duty, the one player, as you can tell from I've been ripping Call of Duty today, as soon as I lose the online functionality of it, I just don't want to play it anymore because I don't really care about the one-player game. It's pointless shooting AIs on Call of Duty. That's not what it's about.
And you feel similarly about FIFA as well.
Yeah, that's true. It's unplayable. I think the AI version of it just doesn't work properly. So I don't really care if that type of game, where obviously it's a multiplayer game, like that's the primary focus of it. It doesn't really matter to me if it may as well be a quick game. Fine, I don't mind so much if I complete that on Monday. But then, if I was playing Alien Isolation, which is a single player game, by definition, there's no multiplayer in it.
Yep.
It's all about the game length. It has to last like a while. There's no way that you get through it in a day, just by the nature of the game. But like, you'd be disappointed if you got through it in a week. I think it would
really
be. I mean, yeah.
Unless you absolutely hammered it. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. If you're going to be that guy who just sits in his room, just like, oh my god, I'm going to play more of Alien Isolation. I mean, yeah, that guy could probably finish it in a week. But
so I suppose it then also brings up the idea of replayability. So you can have a very short single player experience, very story driven, but then whether you want to jump back into it again, whether there are other things to do, whether there are things that you've missed, whether you are a person that wants to go in and get all the collectibles,
get all the coins in all of the islands on Mario, whatever.
Yeah,
and Mario was quite good like that. I mean, it was one of the things. It kind of combined both. There was always plenty of levels to keep moving through to different areas and stuff. And you could go back and find the extra things that were.
You could something like Mario Galaxy, which had, I think, 3 big stars per level. The first time I played through that game, I'd never get all 3 stars. Maybe in the first couple of levels, but as the game progressed and got harder, and there were various set pieces that you had to do, or various buttons that you had to get to make something else happen, to make something else happen, to make something else happen, to make the star appear, you'd never get 3. So there was that replayability that you could jump back into a level to be able to get more stars. But ultimately, if you don't enjoy the game, you're then not going to go back into.
No, that's true.
So the game needs to have that level of enjoyment to have, which almost, I suppose, gives it its level of replayability. Something like Call of Duty. If you like a Call of Duty game, if you like a first-person shooter, which a lot of people do, it is ultimately replayable. You will continue to go back into that game. You will continue to go back into those matches. You will sit there for hours at a time playing that game. You'll then come home the next night. You will play that game. That is a very replayable game.
But
very different to the order.
The same as replaying it. There's a difference. I mean, I don't think playing multiplayer Call of Duty every night is replaying the game again every night. Like playing, because you're playing the same game maps. You might be playing with the same weapon. That doesn't mean you're playing the game. You're not replaying.
You're playing exactly the same game.
Like, you're playing different people. You're doing a different tactic or whatever. Replaying is only if you're doing a level in a game that's in a one-player mode, essentially.
Yeah.
And doing that again. Maybe it's 2-player co-op, but as long as you're completing levels, that's replaying. I think you have to go back. If it's a game where you've gone back to something that you've already achieved and worked it again, that's replay. Whereas playing another version, another installment of the same online level, it doesn't count as a replay, I think.
Okay.
So Call of Duty is massively continual playable, but it's not replayable at all.
Yeah.
I've no interest in playing.
Whereas I suppose a more single player experience, once you've completed it, if you then want to jump back in to play it again, is that replayability.
Yeah,
whether that's for collectibles or whether that's because you really enjoyed the story and you want to experience it again. Yeah.
So one thing that really annoys me is downloadable content for games. So we want to talk about Call of Duty all night, but it's a great example of that, where well, somehow they thought it was a good idea or acceptable. Somehow we lowered our standards for a game that when you buy the game, and sometimes for quite a lot of money, if you're buying Call of Duty in its release week or month, you're going to be paying 40 quid, something along that line, which is not an insignificant amount of money for a computer game. And then you find that, like, I don't know, a couple of months later, there's like 3 or 4 levels that you've got to now, everyone else is playing them, and you've got to pay another 10 quid to get that, and then there's another...
Yeah, that was almost my problem with like zombie mode.
Yeah.
That you'd only ever get 1 or 2 levels unlocked with the main game, but then you had to purchase additional content to be able to play any other levels, and zombie mode was great because that is a continuous or almost a replayable experience. Something that you want to go in with your friends to be able to play, but just play the same level over and over and over and over and over and over again.
There's no progression in zombie mode, is there? Because you definitely die.
yeah.
Which is one of the great things about it, of course.
It is. So the only difference really is with that, if you're playing with the same friends, which you tend to do, or which I tended to do in something like zombie mode, you'd have the same 3 friends that you would play with, then you want those extra levels to be able to have some kind of different experience.
Yeah.
Rather than...
But those extra levels weren't any better. I think.
No.
The very first zombie level, when you wake up in that house, and it was, like a
go to the theatre and around the outside.
So the theatre level was pretty good, but I'm talking about the
original.
We're
talking about World at War. Call of Duty World at War.
The very first one, yeah. That was good. And then there was, like, I think 3 other zombie levels on that World at War. And, one of them was like a Japanese prisoner of war camp thing. That was terrible, that level. I still paid like a tenner for it and 3 other multiplayer. Multiplayer on World of War was not good. I mean,
so something like, to go on a slightly different tangent. So we're talking about Alien Isolation.
Yeah.
Being a game that was long enough that you didn't have to worry about replayability as such. You may have wanted to go back and play that game again, whether you really enjoyed it to then go back and play it on a harder difficulty or something like that. But Alien Isolation has got downloadable content, which is slightly different missions, I think, where you can play as Ellen Ripley.
It's a different person. Yeah.
You can play as various other characters from the original Alien film, and I think it's based more on the Alien film than Alien Isolation is.
Okay.
So you actually play part of the Nostromo ship being able to get away from the alien.
Well, I don't know. I've never played
it.
But that's...
DLC in that sort of sense can give you a slightly different experience because it's extending the story.
Well, fair, but I mean, something about it seems underhand. I mean, did they not have the opportunity to bring those extra experiences or whatever within the game? What was there something limiting? So were they pushed for time? They just had to release the game as it is. These other bits were still under development. They couldn't include it in the release or something. Was it that it meant that because there's quite a lot of data to install for a game like Alien Isolation anyway. Maybe it made it too big to run on a single disc or something like that. I don't know, but it seems to me that that's probably that they wanted to make a lot more money out of it. And if you're already paying quite a lot of money, I don't think it's fair that you're then asking for even more money.
You then jump up to the next tier, you spend an extra £10 on it to buy the special edition to be able to get an extra level.
It's most frankly, you're milking the customers. You've got you by the short and curlies once you've got into the game, and then they're just asking you, like the drug addict, I'll give you this bit, and then next hit's going to cost you kind of thing once you've got you addicted. It's not cool. Yeah. I mean, I just don't like that attitude of the game developers to their customers. I mean, be nicer. Just give them the full game.
I think there's a lot of games I think there's a couple of games coming out, and I might be massively wrong in saying that The Witcher 3 has a set of downloadable content which is going to be completely free. So whether this is extra stuff that they wanted to put in the game, but because they had a release window, they had to get the game completed by a certain time, that they couldn't put in this extra content, so they decided just to give it to people for free. That's cool. That's great. Fine. That's fine. If there are extra elements that you want to put in, as long as it's not a massive mechanic that makes the game completely different. If it's the core game that you're still getting, but it's just additional. If you want to stay in that world and you want to play another 5 hours or another 2 hours within that world, doing a slight variation of what you've been doing previously, to get that for free is fantastic, but to then have to pay £10.50 for that,
That's not cool.
something like that, which is a random, rough price for DLC, is not cool. So in conclusion, game length does matter.
Game length does matter. It should be long enough. I mean, I think my summary is, if the game is about being a one-player game, game length matters. I mean, it's not the only thing, obviously.
Yeah.
So, whatever that Civ was that you grew bored of after Civ 5,
Beyond Earth.
probably a very long game. Doesn't
Yeah.
help it if it's not fun to play. So
Yep.
it's not the only thing that matters. But if it's a one-player game on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
it has to be long enough to sustain your interest for more than, let's say, a couple of days, or else it's a waste of 30 quid. You're not going to
Yeah.
spend
Well,
that.
30 quid, 50 quid.
50 quid, exactly. 50 quid should be, that's a city break in a Novotel somewhere for a couple of nights.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you should get a couple of days at least out of a game.
Completely.
Anyway, we should probably call
Right.
it a night.
We shall finish it there. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, before we do that though, what was
Ooh.
your favourite beer?
Oh, I completely forgot. What was my favourite beer? Ooh, I gave the Fubar some shit for its label,
Mm-hmm.
but it was very nice.
I'm guessing you're not going to go for the Steam.
I'm not going for the Steam, but I think the Brew By Numbers one just kicked it for me. It was just a little bit better quality than the other two.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, just sat above them.
I think the Steam grew on me the more I drank of it. The last couple of sips, I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of getting it a bit more. It became more, I don't know, acceptable.
It's definitely something that you could have another bottle of. So
Yeah.
if you bought sort of 2 or 3 of them, it's not one that you're gonna.
Because sometimes you go in Tesco's, buy a random bottle of beer, and it's not nice. But you wouldn't be like wasting your money by getting this. Get a couple of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm definitely going with the Saison this week.
Yeah. So that's the Brew By Numbers Saison.
However, I think if I was picking between that and the Partisan Saison from a few weeks ago, I'd probably have the Partisan one. It's
Okay.
my favourite Saison we've had, but it's my favourite beer that we've had this week.
Excellent. Right, well, you've been listening to Tanked Up. You can follow us on Twitter at tankedup_cast. You can follow me, and I will get this right this week because I've said it differently in the last 2 episodes, at Nova_47, NOVA_47.
Cool.
And Alex is still not on Twitter.
No.
But you can still send him a letter.
Because you can write to me. I won't give you my address. You just post things randomly and see if it gets to me.
Pick an address in Bristol, send it to Alex, see what happens.
Yeah.
Excellent. Take it easy, guys.
Cool. Bye.